You are not stuck because you lack intelligence. You are stuck because you let emotions decide for you. Every bad decision you regret had one thing in common. You felt first and acted second. Anger made you speak. Fear made you hesitate. Comfort made you delay. This audiobook is about one skill that changes everything. Learning to act without asking your emotions for permission. Your emotions are not the enemy, but they are terrible leaders. If you don't separate what you feel from what you do, you will repeat the same mistakes for the rest of your life. Let's end that. Chapter 1. Stop trusting how you feel in the moment. Most of your problems did not come from bad intentions. They came from trusting how you felt at the wrong time. You felt angry, so you spoke. You felt tired, so you quit. You felt afraid, so you delayed. And later, always later, you looked back and said the same sentence. I shouldn't have done that. That's the pattern. Here is the truth you need to accept early, before anything changes. Feelings are signals. They are not instructions. That's the key. A feeling is information. It tells you something is happening inside you. It does not tell you what to do next. But most people confuse intensity with truth. If the feeling is strong, they assume it must be right. If it feels urgent, they assume it must be acted on. That's where the damage begins. You have a choice. Every single time an emotion appears, you have a choice. You can feel it, or you can follow it. And those two things are not the same. Feel it, don't follow it. Notice it, don't obey it. Say it again until it sinks in. Feel it, don't follow it. Notice it, don't obey it. Most people never learn this separation, so their lives become emotional reactions stitched together over time. Let's break the illusion right now. Your emotions do not care about your future. They care about relief in the moment. Anger wants release. Fear wants safety. Comfort wants ease. None of them are interested in your long-term goals. That's why emotional decisions feel good now and cost you later. Think about the last argument you regret. At the moment, it felt justified. You felt disrespected. You felt right. So you reacted. And afterward? Damage. Distance. Consequences you didn't intend. The emotion passed. The results stayed. That's the rule. Emotions are temporary. Decisions are permanent. That's the key. Now let's talk about the most dangerous lie people believe. If it feels true, it must be true. No. If it feels strong, it means it's loud, not correct. Fear feels convincing. Anger feels logical. Excitement feels like certainty. But none of them are reliable judges. That's why this chapter matters. Because if you keep trusting your feelings in the moment, you will keep sabotaging yourself without realizing it. It's not about being weak. It's not about being broken. It's about misunderstanding how the mind works. Your emotional brain is fast. Your rational brain is slow. Emotion reacts. Reason evaluates. When you act immediately, emotion wins by default. You have a choice. Most people never pause long enough to let reason speak. They live on autopilot, reacting, explaining, justifying. I was tired. I was stressed. I wasn't in the mood. Those are explanations. They are not excuses. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about how you feel. It's about what you do. That's the shift. Let's look at real life. You feel unmotivated, so you skip the work. Later, you feel behind. Then you feel stressed. Then you feel overwhelmed. One emotional decision triggered a chain reaction. Or this, you feel insecure, so you seek validation. You say yes when you should say no. You stay quiet when you should speak. And slowly you lose respect for yourself. Every time the pattern is the same. Emotion speaks first. Action follows immediately. Regret comes last. This audiobook exists to break that cycle. And it starts here. You are not required to act on every feeling. You are not obligated to obey every emotion. You don't need their permission. That's the key. Let's make this practical. From now on, when a strong emotion shows up, you do 3 things. First, name it. Say it internally. This is anger. This is fear. This is discomfort. Naming creates distance. Second, pause. Not forever. Not dramatically. Just long enough to interrupt the reaction. That pause is power. Third, decide deliberately. Ask one question only. What action aligns with who I'm trying to become? Not what feels good. Not what feels justified. What aligns? That's discipline. Feel it, don't follow it. Notice it, don't obey it. Repeat it until it becomes automatic. Here's what will surprise you. Most emotions lose strength when you don't act on them immediately. They peak. They fade. But if you feed them with action, they grow. Anger fed becomes conflict. Fear fed becomes avoidance. Comfort fed becomes stagnation. You have a choice. And this choice is not dramatic. It's quiet. It's internal. No one will applaud you for not reacting. No one will notice you choosing restraint. But your life will. This is where emotional maturity begins. Not by suppressing feelings, but by refusing to let them drive. Your emotions can sit in the car. They just don't get the steering wheel. That's the rule. You don't need to eliminate emotion. You need to demote it. That's the key. If you take nothing else from this chapter, take this. The moment you act while emotional is the moment you lose control. Control comes from delay, from distance, from choice. And choice is everything. You have a choice when you're angry. You have a choice when you're afraid. You have a choice when you're tired. Most people pretend they don't. That's why they stay stuck. You're here because you want something different. So start here. Feel it, don't follow it. Notice it, don't obey it. You are learning to separate emotion from action. That is the foundation of everything that follows. Because once you stop trusting how you feel in the moment, you finally gain access to something stronger. Clarity. And clarity leads to control. You've learned to see the trap. Now it's time to slow the reaction. Chapter 2. Emotional urgency is the enemy of clarity. Most bad decisions don't feel reckless in the moment. They feel urgent. That's the trap. Urgency makes you believe you must act now. Speak now. Decide now. Respond now. And when urgency shows up, clarity disappears. That's the key. Emotional urgency is not speed. It is pressure without perspective. Pressure collapses judgment. Pressure narrows options. Pressure forces short-term thinking. And short-term thinking creates long-term damage. Say it clearly. Urgent feelings create permanent damage. Repeat it. Urgent feelings create permanent damage. You have a choice. Every time urgency appears, you have a choice. You can obey it, or you can slow it down. Most people obey it automatically. They confuse urgency with importance. They assume fast equals decisive. It doesn't. Fast decisions made under emotional pressure are rarely strong. They are reactions dressed up as action. Let's break this down. Urgency is usually fueled by emotion, not reality. Anger creates urgency. It demands expression. It wants release now. Fear creates urgency. It demands safety. It wants certainty now. Excitement creates urgency. It demands action. It wants reward now. Different emotions. Same outcome. Clarity disappears. Think about how many times you've said something you couldn't take back. You felt disrespected. You felt misunderstood. So you responded immediately. At the time, it felt necessary. Later, it felt expensive. That's the pattern. Urgency shortens your time horizon. It makes you forget tomorrow exists. That's why emotional urgency is dangerous. It doesn't ask, what happens next week? It asks, how do I feel right now? That's the flaw. It's not about intelligence. It's not about maturity. It's about discipline. Say it. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. That's the key. Here's what urgency sounds like internally. I have to say something. I can't let this slide. I need to decide now. If I wait, I'll lose my chance. Those are not facts. They are emotional narratives. Urgency lies by compressing time. It tells you now or never when in reality it's now or better. You have a choice. Let's look at pressure. Pressure does not reveal who you are. It reveals your habits. Under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall back to your defaults. If your default is reaction, pressure will expose it. If your default is restraint, pressure will strengthen it. That's why this chapter matters. Because pressure is unavoidable. Urgency will visit you again. The question is whether it controls you. Most people believe pressure demands speed. It doesn't. Pressure demands structure. That's the key. Clarity comes from space. Urgency removes space. So your job is simple. Create space when urgency tries to steal it. Let's make this practical. When you feel emotional urgency, do not ask, what should I do? Ask one better question. What happens if I wait? That question alone restores perspective. In most cases, nothing bad happens. The world does not collapse. The opportunity does not disappear. The emotion fades. Urgent feelings create permanent damage. Delayed actions create better outcomes. Say it again. Urgent feelings create permanent damage. Now let's talk about excitement because it's the most deceptive. People think excitement is positive. They think it leads to growth. Sometimes it does. Often it leads to impulsive decisions. Spending money you didn't plan to spend. Committing to things you can't maintain. Overpromising and under-delivering. Excitement feels like confidence. But confidence without clarity is just noise. You don't need to act just because you're excited. You don't need their permission. That's the key. Now anger. Anger creates the strongest urgency. Convinces you that silence equals weakness. So you speak. You send the message. You make the call. And afterward, you wish you hadn't. Anger wants expression. Discipline chooses timing. It's not about suppressing anger. It's about postponing action. Feel it, don't follow it. Notice it, don't obey it. Urgent feelings create permanent damage. Fear is quieter but just as destructive. Fear whispers. Decide now or you'll lose control. Act now or you'll regret it. So you choose safety. You avoid risk. You stay small. Fear-based urgency doesn't explode your life. It slowly shrinks it. That's the cost. Now listen carefully. Clarity does not arrive in chaos. Clarity arrives in stillness. Urgency is chaos. So if you want better decisions, you must slow down when urgency speeds up. That's discipline. Here's a rule you must adopt. Never make a permanent decision in a temporary emotional state. Say it again. Never make a permanent decision in a temporary emotional state. That rule alone will save you years of regret. You have a choice. You don't need to respond immediately. You don't need to decide today. You don't need to prove anything. Silence is not weakness. Delay is not avoidance. Delay is control. That's the key. Now let's anchor this. The most successful people you admire are not faster emotionally. They are slower. They pause. They wait. They let urgency pass. They understand something most people never learn. Speed feels powerful. Control is powerful. Urgent feelings create permanent damage. Controlled actions create progress. This is how you separate emotion from decision-making in real life. When urgency hits, you slow down on purpose. You create space. You choose deliberately, not because it feels good, but because it works. You are training a new response. Every time you resist urgency, you strengthen clarity. Every time you delay reaction, you build authority over yourself. That's transformation. And it compounds. Because once urgency stops controlling you, something else changes. You stop reacting. You start choosing. That's the entire point of this audiobook. You've learned that feelings lie. Now you've learned that urgency manipulates. Next, you need the skill that makes both powerless. The pause. You've seen the enemy. Now you learn the weapon. Chapter 3. Learn to pause before you react. Most people think control means strength. It doesn't. Control means space. Space between what you feel and what you do next. That space is called the pause. And the pause is a weapon. That's the key. You don't lose control because you're emotional. You lose control because you react too fast. Reaction is automatic. The pause is deliberate, and everything in your life changes. When you learn to insert that pause, say it clearly, pause is power. Delay is control. Repeat it. Pause is power. Delay is control. You have a choice. Every time an emotion rises, you have a choice. React immediately, or pause briefly. Most people never pause. They live on reflex. Text comes in. They reply. Comment triggers them. They respond. Desire appears. They spend. No space. No control. And then they wonder why they feel powerless. Let's be precise. The pause is not hesitation. It is not weakness. It is not avoidance. The pause is command. When you pause, you take back authority over yourself. That's the key. Let's talk about conflict first. Conflict exposes people. Someone says something you don't like. You feel disrespected. Your chest tightens. Your mind says, I need to respond. I can't let this go. If I stay quiet, I lose. That's the emotional voice. If you react in that moment, you lose control. Not because you're wrong, but because you're reactive. Reaction feels powerful, but it hands control to the other person. You have a choice. When conflict hits, pause. Do nothing for a moment. Breathe. Create space. That pause breaks the emotional chain. Pause is power. Delay is control. Now messaging. Messages are emotional landmines. A text arrives with the wrong tone. An email feels disrespectful. A comment hits a nerve. Your fingers want to move faster than your mind. And most people let them. They send messages they later regret. They explain too much. They defend too hard. Why? Because they didn't pause. Here's a rule you must adopt. Never reply while emotional. Read that again. Never reply while emotional. You don't need their permission to wait. You don't owe anyone an immediate response. That's the key. The pause gives you clarity. Clarity gives you leverage. Now impulse spending. Impulse spending is emotional reaction with money. You feel bored. You feel stressed. You feel like you deserve something. So you buy. Not because you planned it, but because it felt good. For a moment. Then the emotion fades. The purchase remains. Urgent feelings create permanent damage. Pause interrupts that cycle. When you feel the urge to buy, pause. Delay the purchase by 24 hours. Most urges disappear. That's discipline. It's not about money. It's about control. Say it. It's not about desire. It's about discipline. That's the key. Now emotional replies. This is where most people destroy relationships. They respond from emotion instead of intention. They say what feels true instead of what's useful. They release instead of resolve. And later they say, that's not what I meant. But it is what you chose. You have a choice. The pause lets you ask one question. What outcome do I want? Not what do I want to say. Not what do I want to prove. What outcome do I want? That question alone changes everything. Pause is power. Delay is control. Now listen carefully. The pause will feel uncomfortable at first. Your emotions will scream. They'll demand action. They'll create urgency. That's normal. You are rewiring your behavior. Discipline always feels unnatural at first. That's the key. Most people think strength is loud. It isn't. Strength is silent restraint. The strongest person in the room is the one who can pause. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to react. You don't need their permission. Let's make this mechanical. When emotion hits, do this. Step 1. Stop. Physically stop what you're doing. Step 2. Breathe slowly. Not to calm down. To buy time. Step 3. Label the emotion. This is anger. This is fear. This is excitement. Labeling creates distance. Step 4. Wait. Not forever. Just long enough for the emotion to peak and soften. That pause is where control lives. That's the key. Now let's destroy another myth. People think pausing means missing opportunities. It doesn't. Rushed decisions miss opportunities. Calm decisions create them. The right opportunity survives delay. The wrong one demands urgency. Urgent feelings create permanent damage. Say it again. Urgent feelings create permanent damage. You have a choice. The pause is how you separate emotion from action in real life. Without the pause, everything you've learned so far is useless. The pause is the bridge between awareness and control. And once you master it, you gain something rare: predictability. You stop being predictable to others. You stop being predictable to yourself. You don't explode. You don't overshare. You don't overreact. You choose. That's power. Now let's be honest. Most people avoid the pause because it feels like loss of control. It isn't. It's the moment control begins. Reaction is easy. Pausing takes discipline. But discipline is the entire point of this audiobook. Say it clearly. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. That's the key. Every time you pause instead of react, you build trust with yourself. You prove you are in charge. And that changes how you see yourself. You are no longer someone who can't help it. You become someone who chooses. That identity shift matters. Because the goal isn't just better decisions. The goal is becoming someone who leads themselves. You're not here to manage emotions. You're here to lead actions. The pause gives you the wheel. You feel the emotion. You don't let it drive. Pause is power. Delay is control. This chapter is not about perfection. You will still react sometimes, but now you'll notice it. And awareness is the first form of control. You've learned to slow down. You've learned to create space. Now it's time to use that space for something stronger. Execution. Because pausing without action is stagnation, and action without emotion is discipline. You've mastered the pause. Now you must learn to act anyway. Chapter 4. Discipline is acting without emotional approval. Most people wait to feel ready. That's why they stay where they are. They wait for motivation. They wait for confidence. They wait for excitement. And while they wait, nothing moves. Here is the truth that separates disciplined people from everyone else. Discipline is action without emotional approval. That's the key. Discipline does not ask how you feel. It does not negotiate with your mood. It does not wait for alignment. It executes. Say it clearly. You don't need to feel ready. You need to move. Repeat it. You don't need to feel ready. You need to move. You have a choice. Every day, in small moments, you have a choice. Act because you feel like it, or act because it's required. Most people let emotions vote. Disciplined people remove emotion from the decision. That's the difference. Let's destroy a dangerous belief right now. Motivation is not the engine. Motivation is the reward. Action comes first. Feeling follows later. But most people reverse the order. They try to feel first, then act. That system fails. Confidence does not create action. Action creates confidence. That's the key. Look at your own life. How many things do you know you should do, but don't do because you don't feel like it? Exercise, focus, hard conversations, consistent work. It's not that you don't understand. It's that you're waiting for permission from your emotions. You don't need their permission. Say it again. You don't need their permission. Discipline is not intensity. It is consistency without emotion. Now listen carefully. There will be days when motivation is zero. Confidence is gone. Energy is low. Those days matter the most. Because anyone can act when they feel good. Only disciplined people act when they don't. That's the key. Discipline is quiet. It doesn't feel heroic. It doesn't feel exciting. It feels boring. It feels repetitive. It feels uncomfortable. And that's why it works. Most people chase emotional highs. Disciplined people build systems. It's not about talent. It's not about personality. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about motivation. It's about discipline. That's the key. Let's make this practical. From now on, stop asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" That question is poison. Replace it with one question only. What's the next required action? No emotion. No debate. Just execution. You have a choice. When your alarm goes off, you act. When it's time to work, you work. When it's time to rest, you rest. Not because you feel aligned, but because you decided in advance. That's discipline. Planning is where discipline begins. Execution is where it proves itself. Here's another truth people avoid. Waiting to feel ready is fear pretending to be patience. Fear of failure. Fear of discomfort. Fear of effort. Discipline calls that out. Discipline says, we move anyway. You don't need to feel confident to start. Confidence comes after repetition. You don't need to feel motivated to act. Motivation follows progress. You don't need excitement. You need structure. That's the key. Now let's talk about resistance. Resistance always shows up before growth. Your mind will say, Not today. Tomorrow will be better. Let's wait until we feel more ready. That voice is not wisdom. It's avoidance. And avoidance compounds. One skipped action becomes a habit. One excuse becomes a pattern. Discipline interrupts that pattern. You have a choice. You can obey the voice, or you can override it. Override is the word. Discipline is overriding emotion with intention. Say it again. Discipline is overriding emotion with intention. That's the key. Here's a rule you must adopt. Decide once. Execute daily. Do not renegotiate with yourself every day. That drains energy and invites emotion back in. Rules remove emotion. I train at this time. I work for this block. I don't check my phone during focus. No debate. No mood check. Rules execute. Moods negotiate. You already know which one wins. It's not about willpower. It's about structure. That's the key. Now let's talk about identity. Every time you act without emotional approval, you change how you see yourself. You stop being someone who waits. You become someone who moves. That identity shift is powerful. You trust yourself more. You respect yourself more. Because you do what you said you would do. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Discipline builds self-trust. And self-trust changes everything. You have a choice. Most people break promises to themselves daily. Disciplined people don't. Not because they're special, but because they act without checking how they feel. That's the key. Now let's be honest. You will not feel aligned most days. You will not feel inspired most days. That's normal. The mistake is thinking you're broken because of it. You're not broken. You're human. Discipline exists to carry you through that. You don't need to feel ready. You need to move. Say it one more time. You don't need to feel ready. You need to move. This chapter is not asking you to be extreme. It's asking you to be consistent. Small actions. Daily execution. No emotional negotiation. That's transformation. And here's the final truth. The life you want is built on days you didn't feel like it. The results you admire come from actions done without applause. The strength you seek is earned in silence. Discipline is not loud. It's reliable. You have learned how to pause. Now you've learned how to act anyway. This is how you separate emotion from decision-making. You don't wait for emotion to cooperate. You lead. You lead yourself. And once you do that, something becomes obvious. Your emotions follow your actions, not the other way around. That's the key. You've learned to act without approval. Now it's time to see the deeper pattern. Because emotions don't just appear randomly. They follow predictable loops. And to truly master yourself, you must recognize those loops. You moved without feeling ready. Now let's expose what keeps pulling you back. Chapter 5. Your emotional patterns are predictable. Most people believe their emotions are random. They aren't. They are patterned, repetitive, predictable. That's the key. If your life feels stuck, it's not because new problems keep appearing. It's because the same emotional loop keeps running. Same trigger, same feeling, same decision, same outcome. Say it clearly. Same emotion, same decision, same life. Repeat it. Same emotion, same decision, same life. You have a choice. You can keep reacting inside the loop, or you can step outside it. But first, you have to see it. Let's expose how this actually works. An emotional pattern has 3 parts. The trigger, the reaction, the behavior. The trigger is external. Someone criticizes you. Something goes wrong. Pressure increases. The reaction is internal. anger, fear, shame, frustration. The behavior is automatic. You withdraw, you overreact, you avoid, you sabotage, and the outcome is familiar. Regret, stagnation, conflict, the same conversation in a different week. That's not bad luck. That's a loop. Same emotion, same decision, same life. That's the key. Most people never question the loop. They justify it. That's just how I am. That's my personality. I've always reacted this way. Those are not explanations. They are surrender. You don't need their permission to change. Now listen carefully. Your emotions are consistent because you are consistent. You react the same way because you haven't interrupted the pattern. And patterns don't break by accident. They break by awareness and discipline. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. That's the key. Let's look at real examples. You feel overwhelmed, so you procrastinate. Then you fall behind. Then you feel overwhelmed again. Same emotion, same decision, same life. Or this, you feel insecure, so you seek validation. You say yes when you mean no. You resent it later. Same emotion, same decision, same life. Or this, you feel angry, so you react immediately. You damage the relationship. Then you feel isolated. Same emotion, same decision, same life, different situations, identical structure. The problem is not the trigger. The trigger will always exist. The problem is the default response. That's the key. Most people wait for the trigger to disappear. It won't. Stress will return. People will disappoint you. Life will apply pressure. You have a choice. You can keep reacting the same way, or you can change the response. Changing the response changes everything. But first, you must stop pretending you're surprised by the outcome. If you react the same way, you already know how it ends, and yet you repeat it. Why? Because familiarity feels safer than change. That's the flaw. It's not about intelligence. It's not about insight. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about awareness. It's about discipline. That's the key. Awareness shows you the loop. Discipline breaks it. Now here's the part most people avoid. You must take responsibility for your patterns. Not blame. Responsibility. Blame says, "This happened to me." Responsibility says, "I keep choosing this response." That's empowering. Because what you choose, you can change. You have a choice. Let's make this practical. You need to map your patterns. Not emotionally, mechanically. Ask yourself 3 questions. What triggers me consistently? What emotion shows up every time? What behavior follows? Write it down. Don't explain it. Don't justify it. Just observe it. Observation creates leverage. That's the key. Once you see the pattern, you stop being controlled by it unconsciously. Now you can interrupt it. But interruption does not mean suppression. You don't eliminate the emotion. You change the behavior. That's discipline. Same trigger. Same emotion. Different decision. That's growth. Same emotion. Different action. Different life. Say it again. Same emotion. Different decision. Different life. That's the upgrade. Most people try to change how they feel. That's a losing strategy. You change how you act. Feelings follow later. You don't need their permission. Let's be clear. Emotions are predictable because they are tied to identity. You feel overwhelmed because you avoid. You feel insecure because you overextend. You feel angry because you react. The emotion reinforces the behavior. The behavior reinforces the emotion. Loop closed. Discipline breaks the loop. That's the key. Here's a rule you must adopt. Never trust a repeated emotion to give you a new solution. If anger didn't help last time, it won't help this time. If avoidance failed before, it will fail again. Same emotion, same decision, same life. You have a choice. The moment you feel a familiar emotion, that's not a cue to react. It's a warning sign. It's telling you, you are about to repeat yourself. That awareness is power. Now listen carefully. Breaking emotional patterns feels uncomfortable because it threatens identity. You will feel wrong at first. Choosing discipline will feel unnatural. Choosing restraint will feel weak. Choosing patience will feel risky. That's normal. Growth always feels unfamiliar. Comfort lives inside patterns. Freedom lives outside them. That's the key. Most people stay trapped not because they can't change, but because they mistake familiarity for safety. You don't need to feel safe to act correctly. You need discipline. You have a choice. Every time a familiar emotion appears, you can say internally, I've been here before. I know where this leads. I choose differently. That moment matters. That moment changes the loop. You are not trying to win every emotional battle. You are trying to stop repeating the same one. That's transformation. Now let's anchor this. If you want a different life, you need different decisions. If you want different decisions, you must act differently under the same emotions. Same pressure. Same feeling. New response. That's maturity. That's leadership. That's discipline. Say it one more time. Same emotion. Same decision. Same life. And now say the new rule. Same emotion. Different decision. Different life. That's the key. You've learned to pause. You've learned to act without approval. Now you've learned to recognize the loop. The next step is even harder. Because even when you act differently, your emotions will try to pull you back. They'll attach to outcomes, to success, to failure, and that attachment will distort your decisions again. You've seen the pattern. Now you must detach from what it produces. You recognize the loop. Now let's remove the emotional grip. Chapter 6: Detach from outcomes while you decide. Most people don't fail because they choose the wrong action. They fail because they choose while emotionally attached to the result. That attachment poisons judgment. That's the key. Before they even act, they are already afraid of losing. Afraid of looking stupid. Afraid of wasting time. Afraid of failing. So they hesitate. They overthink. They compromise. And the decision collapses before it begins. Here is the rule you must adopt. Control the action. Release the outcome. Say it clearly. Control the action. Release the outcome. You have a choice. Every decision offers the same fork in the road. Choose based on process, or choose based on fear of results. Most people choose the second. That's why they stay stuck. Let's be precise. Outcome attachment means you are emotionally invested in what might happen. You imagine success and crave it. You imagine failure and fear it. Both distort your decisions. Success attachment makes you reckless. Failure attachment makes you cautious. Neither is clarity. Clarity comes from detachment. That's the key. When you are attached to outcomes, you stop asking, what is the right action? You start asking, what will make me feel safe? That shift is subtle and destructive. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about outcome. It's about discipline. That's the key. Think about how many times you didn't start because you couldn't guarantee success. You wanted certainty before effort, results before risk. That's not strategy. That's avoidance. You don't need their permission to act. You don't need a guarantee. You need a process. Let's talk about fear. Fear of outcomes shows up early. Before action. Before movement. It whispers, What if it doesn't work? What if you fail? What if people judge you? Those questions are not warnings. They are distractions. They pull your attention away from what you can control. And you can only control one thing: your action. That's the key. When you focus on outcomes, you give your power to the future. When you focus on action, you take power in the present. Say it again. Control the action. Release the outcome. Most people reverse this. They obsess over results and neglect execution. They want motivation from imagined success instead of discipline in the present. That's why nothing moves. You have a choice: detach or be controlled. Now let's destroy a common misunderstanding. Detachment does not mean apathy. It does not mean you don't care. It means you don't let emotion corrupt decision-making. You care deeply. You act precisely. You release the rest. That's strength. That's the key. Look at professionals under pressure. Surgeons, pilots, athletes. They don't focus on winning mid-action. They don't imagine the applause or the mistake. They execute the process, step by step, breath by breath, because outcome focus creates errors. Process focus creates performance. It's the same for your life. When you decide with outcome attachment, you hesitate, overcorrect, or quit early. When you decide with process focus, you act cleanly. You have a choice. Here's a practical rule. Never decide while emotionally invested in a result. If you feel desperate for success, pause. If you feel terrified of failure, pause. That emotion is telling you you're attached. Pause is power. Then ask one question only: what is the correct action regardless of result? That question restores clarity. That's the key. Now let's talk about perfectionism. Perfectionism is outcome attachment disguised as standards. You want the perfect plan, the perfect timing, the perfect execution. So you wait. That's not discipline. That's fear. You don't need the perfect outcome. You need consistent action. Release the fantasy. Execute the process. Control the action. Release the outcome. Say it again. Most people overestimate the importance of one decision. They think everything hinges on this moment. It doesn't. Progress comes from repeated correct actions, not one flawless result. Outcome attachment magnifies pressure. Pressure kills clarity. Discipline removes pressure. By narrowing focus to what you can control. That's the key. Now let's address success attachment. Success attachment is just as dangerous as fear. You imagine the reward, the validation, the recognition. So you rush. You skip steps. You force results. And you sabotage the process. You don't need to chase success. You need to build consistency. Success follows discipline, not the other way around. You have a choice: act to win, or act correctly. Only one produces long-term results. Now listen carefully. Detachment frees you. When you release the outcome, you are free to act boldly, because failure loses its power. If you act correctly and fail, you adjust and continue. If you act emotionally and fail, you hesitate and retreat. That's the difference. Control the action. Release the outcome. That phrase is not motivational. It's operational. It tells you where to put your attention. On the step, on the rep, on the call, on the work. Not on applause, not on judgment, not on fear. That's the key. Let's make this concrete. Before any important decision, do this. Write down what you can control. Write down what you can't. Actions go in the first column. Outcomes go in the second. Then ignore the second column. That's discipline. You don't need their permission to ignore it. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Outcome attachment is ego. You want to look good. You want to be right. You want to avoid embarrassment. Ego distorts decisions. Discipline removes ego. It says, do the work. Let the result be what it is. That humility is power. That's the key. When you detach from outcomes, you become calm under pressure. Not because pressure disappears, but because it no longer controls you. You stop reacting to imagined futures. You start acting in the present. That's leadership. That's self-mastery. You have a choice. Be controlled by results you can't guarantee, or be disciplined in actions you can control. One creates anxiety. The other creates progress. Control the action. Release the outcome. Say it one more time. This chapter matters because it removes fear from decision-making. Not by eliminating fear, but by making it irrelevant. You act anyway. You've learned to pause. You've learned to act without approval. You've learned to break patterns. Now you've learned to release outcomes. That clears the path. Because the next obstacle is subtle. It doesn't feel like fear. It feels comfortable. And comfort will try to decide for you. You detached from results. Now you must confront ease. Chapter 7. Stop letting comfort decide your future. Most people don't ruin their lives with bad decisions. They ruin them with comfortable ones. That's the truth. Comfort does not feel dangerous. It feels reasonable. It feels earned. It feels harmless. That's why it's so effective. That's the key. Comfort is an emotion, and like every unchecked emotion, it quietly takes control. Say it clearly. Comfort today costs freedom tomorrow. Repeat it. Comfort today costs freedom tomorrow. You have a choice. Every day, in small moments, you choose between comfort and growth. Most people don't realize they're choosing at all. They call it rest. They call it balance. They call it waiting for the right time. But most of the time, it's just comfort deciding for them. And comfort always chooses now over later. Let's be precise. Comfort avoids effort. Comfort avoids discomfort. Comfort avoids uncertainty. Growth requires all three. That's why comfort and progress are enemies. Not dramatic enemies. Quiet ones. Comfort doesn't shout. It whispers. Do it tomorrow. You deserve a break. It's not that important. And one comfortable decision doesn't ruin your life. But repeated daily, it shapes it. Same comfort. Same avoidance. Same life. That's the pattern. Comfort today costs freedom tomorrow. That's the key. Let's talk about procrastination. Procrastination is not laziness. It's comfort seeking. You avoid the task not because it's impossible, but because it's uncomfortable. Thinking feels heavy. Starting feels awkward. Effort feels inconvenient. So you delay. And delay feels good briefly. Then pressure increases. Stress grows. Self-respect drops. That's the exchange. Short-term comfort for long-term cost. You have a choice. You can tolerate discomfort now, or you can tolerate regret later. Only one leads to freedom. That's the key. Now avoidance. Avoidance is comfort wearing a smarter disguise. You avoid conversations. You avoid decisions. You avoid responsibility. Not because you can't handle them, but because handling them requires discomfort. Avoidance buys peace in the moment. It sells control in the future. Problems don't disappear when you avoid them. They compound. Comfort today costs freedom tomorrow. Say it again. Now let's talk about choosing ease over growth. Ease feels efficient. Feels smart. Why take the hard path when the easy one is available? Because the easy path trains you to avoid effort. And that training sticks. Every time you choose ease, you reinforce a pattern. I stop when it's hard. I quit when it's uncomfortable. I wait when it's uncertain. Those patterns don't stay isolated. They spread. They touch your work, your health, your relationships. Comfort becomes your decision maker. That's dangerous. You don't need its permission. That's the key. Let's be honest. Most people are not stuck because life is unfair. They are stuck because comfort is familiar. Comfort feels safe. Growth feels unknown. The mind prefers the familiar, even if it's limiting. That's the flaw. It's not about circumstances. It's not about luck. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about comfort. It's about discipline. That's the key. Discipline does not ask, what feels easiest right now? It asks, what builds freedom later? Freedom is not free. Freedom is built through repeated discomfort. Small discomforts, daily discomforts, chosen discomforts. That's how you stop comfort from deciding for you. You have a choice. Now here's a hard truth. If your days feel easy, your future will feel hard. If your days feel hard, your future gets easier. Comfort today costs freedom tomorrow. That equation never changes. Let's make this practical. From now on, treat comfort as a signal. When something feels too comfortable, ask yourself, what am I avoiding? That question exposes the cost. When you want to delay, ask, what happens if I don't? When you want to quit, ask, what does this train me to become? Comfort hates those questions. Discipline thrives on them. That's the key. Now listen carefully. This chapter is not telling you to suffer unnecessarily. Rest is real. Recovery matters. But rest is intentional. Comfort is avoidance. Rest supports growth. Comfort replaces it. Learn the difference. Rest is scheduled. Comfort is reactive. Rest restores energy. Comfort drains momentum. You know which one you're choosing. You don't need to lie to yourself anymore. You have a choice. The moment you feel the pull of comfort, that's your moment of power. That's where discipline is trained. Not in extreme moments, in ordinary ones. When you get up on time. When you start without motivation. When you finish even when bored. Those moments build freedom. That's the key. Now let's address the lie people use to protect comfort. I'll start when things calm down. I'll push later. Now is not the right time. Life does not calm down. Pressure doesn't disappear. If you wait for comfort to go away, you'll wait forever. You act despite it. You don't need to feel ready. You need to move. Comfort tells you to wait. Discipline tells you to act. Only one leads to growth. Comfort today costs freedom tomorrow. Say it one more time. Now here's the shift you must make. Stop asking, how do I make this easier? Start asking, how do I make this consistent? Ease is temporary. Consistency compounds. And consistency requires discipline. That's the key. Every time you choose the harder option, you weaken comfort's grip. Every time you choose discipline, you strengthen self-trust. You become someone who does not collapse into ease. That identity matters. Because once comfort stops deciding, something else changes. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop making excuses. You stop waiting. You act. You lead. You have a choice. Comfort will always be available. Discipline must be chosen. Daily. Quietly. Without applause. That's how futures are built. You've learned to detach from outcomes. Now you've learned to resist comfort. The next step is even more powerful. Because once comfort is removed, your mind will try to decide for you. Through moods. Through overthinking. Through internal debate. So now you must replace moods with rules. You stopped letting comfort decide. Now let's install something stronger. Chapter 8. Think in rules, not moods. Most people don't lack discipline. They lack rules. They wake up and ask their mood what to do. Their mood negotiates. Their mood delays. Their mood lies. That's the problem. Moods are inconsistent. Rules are not. That's the key. If you let moods decide, you will renegotiate your life every day. If you let rules decide, execution becomes automatic. Say it clearly. Rules execute. Moods negotiate. Repeat it. Rules execute. Moods negotiate. You have a choice. Every decision can be filtered through emotion or enforced through a rule. One creates friction. The other removes it. Most people exhaust themselves by debating with their own feelings. Should I start? Am I ready? Maybe later. That internal debate is expensive. Rules end the debate. That's the key. Let's define this properly. A rule is a pre-made decision. It is clarity decided in advance. I work from this time to this time. I don't check my phone during focus. I train even when I'm tired. No discussion. No mood check. Rules don't care how you feel. They only care that you execute. That's discipline. It's not about motivation. It's not about confidence. Say it clearly. It's not about mood. It's about discipline. That's the key. Most people believe freedom comes from flexibility. It doesn't. Freedom comes from structure. When everything is optional, nothing gets done. Rules remove optionality. They turn maybe into done. That's why high performers love rules. They don't trust their moods. They trust systems. You don't need their permission to adopt this. Now listen carefully. Moods are reactive. Rules are proactive. Moods respond to how you slept, what someone said, how the day feels. Rules ignore all of that. Rules say, this happens regardless. That reliability builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds identity. That's the chain. Rules execute. Moods negotiate. Let's look at how moods sabotage progress. You wake up tired. Your mood says, skip today. You feel bored. Your mood says, this isn't important. You feel uncertain. Your mood says, wait until you're sure. And because there is no rule, you listen. One skipped action becomes two. Two becomes a habit. A habit becomes a lifestyle. Same mood-driven logic. Same outcome. Same life. You have a choice. Rules stop this early. Rules say, we act first. Feelings follow later. That's the key. Now let's talk about hesitation. Hesitation exists because the mind is undecided. Rules eliminate indecision. When a rule exists, hesitation has no place. You don't hesitate to brush your teeth. You don't debate whether to sleep. Why? Because those behaviors are rule-based. They happen automatically. That's the standard you need for your most important actions. Not emotional motivation. Automation. Rules execute. Moods negotiate. Say it again. Now here's the mistake people make. They create vague rules. I'll try to work more. I'll be healthier. I'll stay consistent. Those are intentions, not rules. Rules are specific, clear, non-negotiable. I work for 90 minutes before checking messages. I train at 7 a.m. No exceptions. I finish what I start. Specificity removes escape routes. That's the key. Rules also remove self-betrayal. When you break a rule, you know it. There's no excuse, no confusion. That clarity builds accountability. You stop lying to yourself. And self-honesty is power. You have a choice. You can keep letting moods decide, or you can install rules that protect your future. Now let's address resistance. Your emotions will resist rules. They'll say, this feels rigid. This feels extreme. This feels limiting. That's a lie. Rules don't limit you. They protect you. They protect you from indecision, from procrastination, from comfort. Rules are boundaries for your future self. That's the key. Now let's talk about identity again. When you live by rules, you change how you see yourself. You become reliable, predictable in a good way. You trust yourself because you do what you said you would do. That trust is rare. Most people don't trust themselves. They've broken too many promises. Rules rebuild that trust. One execution at a time. Rules execute. Moods negotiate. Now here's how to implement this. Start small. Choose 3 rules only. 1 for work. 1 for health. 1 for focus. Make them simple. Make them clear. No exceptions. Then execute. Not perfectly. Consistently. When you break a rule, don't spiral. Correct immediately. Rules are not about punishment. They are about direction. That's the key. Now let's talk about emotional negotiation. Moods love to negotiate. Just today. Just this once. You deserve a break. Rules end negotiation. There is no discussion. That mental silence is freeing. You stop arguing with yourself all day. You conserve energy. And that energy goes into action. That's discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about willpower. It's about rules. That's the key. Rules also protect you under pressure. When stress rises, moods become unreliable. Rules keep you steady. They act as rails. You stay on track. Even when emotions spike. That's emotional separation in action. Now listen carefully. Rules do not make you robotic. They make you consistent. You still feel emotions. You just don't let them vote. You feel tired. You act anyway. You feel unmotivated. You execute anyway. You don't need their permission. That's the key. Most people try to control emotions directly. That rarely works. Rules control behavior instead. Behavior changes identity. Identity reshapes emotion. That's the order. Rules first. Feelings later. Rules execute. Moods negotiate. Say it one more time. This chapter matters because it removes daily decision fatigue. You stop asking, "What should I do?" You already decided. And once rules are in place, something powerful happens. Consistency appears. Not because you're inspired, but because you're structured. You've removed emotion from execution. You've replaced moods with rules. And that's how discipline becomes sustainable. You've learned to pause. You've learned to act without approval. You've learned to break patterns. You've learned to resist comfort. Now you've learned to install rules. The next step is identity. Because rules shape who you become. Through repeated action. You've built the system. Now you must embody it. You stopped letting moods decide. Now let's become someone who acts consistently. Chapter 9. Become someone who acts consistently. Most people think consistency is a strategy. It isn't. Consistency is identity. That's the key. You don't become consistent by trying harder. You become consistent by deciding who you are. And then acting like it every day. Say it clearly. I act because it's who I am, not because I feel like it. Repeat it. I act because it's who I am, not because I feel like it. You have a choice. You can keep letting emotions explain your behavior. Or you can let identity command it. One creates excuses. The other creates authority. Let's be precise. Your identity is not what you say. It's what you repeat. If you repeatedly delay, you become a delayer. If you repeatedly quit, you become a quitter. If you repeatedly show up, you become reliable. Same actions. Same outcomes. Same identity. That's how it works. Most people wait to feel like a disciplined person. That feeling never comes first. Identity is built from action, not emotion. That's the key. Here's the mistake people make. They try to change how they feel. Instead of changing what they do, they say, I need more motivation. I need to feel confident. I need to feel ready. No, you need repetition. Repetition creates identity. Identity creates consistency. You don't need their permission. Say it again. You don't need their permission. Let's talk about self-trust. Self-trust is not built through intention. It's built through kept promises. Every time you say you'll do something and don't, you weaken trust with yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, you strengthen it. This is not emotional. It's mechanical. Trust follows evidence. That's the key. Most people don't trust themselves. They've trained themselves not to. They negotiate. They delay. They excuse. So when it's time to act, their own voice carries no weight. Consistency fixes that. One action, then another, then another. No drama, no intensity, just repetition. You have a choice. You can keep trying to feel disciplined, or you can act disciplined and let the feeling catch up. Only one works. Say it clearly. It's not about confidence. It's about discipline. That's the key. Now let's address a lie. People think consistency requires perfection. It doesn't. Consistency requires recovery. You will miss days. You will slip. That's not failure. Failure is staying down. Consistency is returning to the rule quickly. No emotion. No story. Just return. That behavior is identity. I act because it's who I am, not because I feel like it. Say it again. Now let's talk about authority. Internal authority is when your decisions carry weight with you. You say you'll do something, and you do it. No internal debate. No negotiation. That authority is rare. Most people outsource authority to mood, motivation, or circumstance. Consistent people don't. They act first. They feel later. That's leadership. That's the key. Here's how to build that identity intentionally. Choose one non-negotiable action. 1. Something small but daily. 10 minutes of focused work. A short walk. A single task completed. Then do it every day. No matter how you feel. Especially when you don't feel like it. That's where identity is forged. You are not proving anything to others. You are proving something to yourself. You don't need their permission. Now listen carefully. The brain learns from behavior, not intention. When you act consistently, your brain updates the story. This is who I am. Not aspirational. Not motivational. Factual. And once the brain believes it, resistance drops. Action becomes easier, not because you're motivated, but because it's aligned with identity. That's the shift. Rules execute. Moods negotiate. Identity enforces the rules. That's the key. Let's talk about inconsistency. Inconsistency is not a moral flaw. It's a systems problem. If your actions depend on mood, you will be inconsistent. If your actions depend on rules and identity, you will stabilize. It's not about trying harder. It's about removing variables. Say it clearly. It's not about willpower. It's about identity. That's the key. Now let's destroy another myth. People think they need a big breakthrough to change identity. They don't. Identity shifts with small, repeated actions. Quiet wins. Unseen wins. Those matter most. Because no one is watching. And you still show up. That's identity. I act because it's who I am, not because I feel like it. Repeat it. Here's what will happen if you commit to consistency. Your emotions will stop controlling you. Not because they disappear, but because they lose authority. You feel tired. You act anyway. You feel uncertain. You execute anyway. You feel bored. You continue anyway. And over time, something changes. You stop asking permission. You stop negotiating. You just do. That's internal authority. That's the key. Now let's be honest. Consistency is not glamorous. It's repetitive. Most people quit because they're bored, not because it's hard. But boredom is not a stop sign. It's a test. If you can continue through boredom, you can continue through anything. That skill transfers everywhere. Work, health, relationships. Consistency is the backbone of all progress. You have a choice. You can chase intensity, or you can build consistency. Intensity fades. Consistency compounds. Say it again. Now here's a practical instruction. When you miss a day, do not analyze it. Do not explain it. Do not punish yourself. Return immediately. The speed of return defines consistency. That's discipline. That's the key. Over time, consistency becomes automatic. Not because you're special, but because you trained it. Identity followed behavior. And once that happens, separating emotion from decision-making becomes natural. You don't debate. You don't react. You act. You've learned to pause. You've learned to execute without approval. You've learned to break loops. You've learned to detach from outcomes. You've learned to resist comfort. You've learned to live by rules. Now you've learned to become consistent. That's almost the entire system. One final piece remains. Because consistency is not a one-time achievement. It's a daily practice. And if you don't maintain it, old patterns return quietly. So the final lesson is simple and relentless. You must recommit every day. You've built the identity. Now you must protect it. Chapter 10: Emotional Control is a daily practice. Most people think emotional control is a breakthrough, a moment, a realization. It isn't. Emotional control is maintenance. That's the key. You don't decide once and become disciplined forever. You decide again, and again, and again. Every day presents the same test. Say it clearly. Every day the same choice, react or lead. Repeat it. Every day the same choice, react or lead. You have a choice. Not once in your life. Every single day. Because emotions reset daily. Pressure returns daily. Comfort reappears daily. And so must discipline. That's the truth. If you stop practicing separation, emotion quietly retakes control. No announcement. No warning. Just slow drift. That's why this chapter matters. Separation of emotion and action is not an achievement. It's a habit. And habits only exist when they are repeated. That's the key. Let's be honest. You will still feel anger. You will still feel fear. You will still feel resistance. The goal was never to eliminate emotion. The goal was to stop letting it decide. That requires daily awareness, daily correction, daily recommitment. Every day the same choice, react or lead. Now listen carefully. Most people fail at emotional control. Not because they don't understand it, but because they stop paying attention. They assume mastery is permanent. It's not. Discipline fades when it's not reinforced. That's the flaw. It's not about understanding. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about insight. It's about discipline. That's the key. Emotional control works like physical fitness. You don't train once and stay strong. You train consistently. Skip too many days, and weakness returns. The same is true here. You must practice noticing, pausing, choosing, daily. Now let's define what practice actually means. Practice does not mean perfection. It means awareness. Awareness of triggers. Awareness of emotions. Awareness of decisions. When awareness drops, reaction increases. That's the relationship. So your first daily responsibility is simple. Notice. Notice when emotion rises. Notice when urgency appears. Notice when comfort whispers. That noticing is not passive. It's active discipline. That's the key. Here's a daily rule you must adopt. Assume you will be tested today. Not maybe. Not sometimes. Today. That mindset keeps you alert. Because emotional control is lost. When you get careless, you have a choice. Careless reaction. Or deliberate leadership. Every day the same choice, react or lead. Now let's talk about self-correction. You will fail sometimes. You will react. You will say something you shouldn't. You will choose comfort. That does not erase progress. What matters is what you do next. Most people fail twice. They react once. Then they spiral. Shame, frustration, self-judgment. That emotional spiral creates more loss of control. Discipline stops the spiral. Discipline says, correct, continue, no drama, no story. That's the key. Correction is part of mastery. The faster you correct, the stronger your control becomes. Delay correction, and patterns return. You don't need their permission to reset. Now listen carefully. Daily emotional control is boring. There is no climax, no applause, no finish line, and that's why most people quit. They want a feeling of arrival. Discipline offers none. It offers reliability. That's the trade. If you need excitement to stay disciplined, you will fail. If you accept repetition, you will win. That's the key. Every day the same choice, react or lead. Now let's make this practical. At the end of every day, ask yourself one question. Where did emotion try to lead me today? Not to judge, to observe. That reflection builds awareness. Awareness sharpens control. Control improves decisions. This loop is intentional. You are training attention. That's discipline. Now let's talk about leadership. Leading yourself is harder than leading others. Because there is no external authority. No consequences enforced by anyone else. Only self-respect. That's the currency. Every time you choose discipline, you deposit into self-respect. Every time you react emotionally, you withdraw. Over time, the balance shows. Strong self-respect creates calm authority. Low self-respect creates reactivity. That's the pattern. You have a choice. Now here's a hard truth. You will never outgrow this practice. There is no level where emotions stop testing you. Responsibility increases pressure. Growth increases exposure. If anything, emotional control becomes more important over time. That's why it must be daily. That's the key. Let's address fatigue. Some days you will feel tired of being disciplined. That feeling is normal. It does not mean you should stop. It means discipline is working. Fatigue is the cost of leadership. You don't quit leadership because it's tiring. You strengthen systems, rules, structure, consistency. Those carry you when energy is low. Rules execute. Moods negotiate. You already know this. You don't need their permission. Now let's anchor the entire book in one sentence. Emotions inform. Discipline decides. Say it again. Every concept you learned leads here. You learned not to trust feelings blindly. You learned to slow urgency. You learned to pause. You learned to act without approval. You learned to recognize patterns. You learned to detach from outcomes. You learned to resist comfort. You learned to live by rules. You learned to build identity through consistency. All of that exists for one reason, so that every day you can choose to lead instead of react. Every day the same choice, react or lead. That's the system. Now here's the final instruction of this chapter. Do not aim to be emotionally perfect. Aim to be emotionally consistent. Consistent awareness. consistent correction, consistent action. That wins. Perfection collapses under pressure. Consistency survives it. That's the key. And here's the final truth you need to hear. No one is coming to manage your emotions for you. No one is coming to make your decisions cleaner. No one is coming to save you from reaction. You lead yourself, daily, quietly, without permission. You have a choice tomorrow morning, and the next day, and the next. Every day the same choice, react or lead. This chapter ends the instruction. What follows is application. You now know the system. You now know the rules. The challenge is simple. When emotion rises, you pause. You choose. You act with discipline. Again, and again, and again. That is how separation becomes permanent. Not through a moment, through practice. And practice is daily. You've reached the end of the teaching. Now the work begins. You now understand the real problem. It was never your intelligence. It was never your potential. It was letting emotions sit in the driver's seat. From this moment forward, you have a choice. You can feel without following. You can pause instead of reacting. You can act without emotional permission. That's the line between control and chaos. Your emotions will still show up. Fear will still speak. Comfort will still tempt you. But they no longer decide. The challenge is simple and brutal. For the next 24 hours, do one important action without waiting to feel ready. No motivation. No emotional approval. Just execution. That's how this changes your life.